We finally learn about Desmond's backstory and his family ties. He comes from
Bloodline Atreides. Bloodline Harkonnen.
which means he's a pre-Kwisatz Haderach. And we learned how the thinking machines were using biological weapons against humans during the Butlerian Jihad. So let's break it all down. I want to start off with Desmond. But before we talk about who his parents are or why he might be the prototype to the Kwisatz Haderach, I want to talk about the big Easter egg that was revealed in the start of the episode. And that's the fact that Emperor Havoko created a new elite task force and placed Desmond in charge of it. I believe that new task force is the foundation of the Sardaukar. The Sardaukar were an elite military force of the Empire that served House Corrino for the next 10,000 years, that were renowned and feared throughout the universe, not only because of their superior fighting abilities, but because of their fanatical zeal, and their home base is Salusa Secundus. And it's those two things that make me believe this is the foundation of the Sardaukar. One, their fanatic zeal, which they would get from Desmond, and two, the fact that they're based in Salusa Secundus, and from the time of Dune Prophecy all the way to the rise of Paul Atreides, the Sardaukar will be based on Salusa Secundus, even after House Corrino leaves the planet and it becomes the desolate wasteland that we know it to be by the time of the Dune novels and movie. I thought it was pretty cool that they showed us how the Sardaukar were formed in the first place, but now let's dive into Desmond Hart and his bloodline. At the end of the episode, Tula takes Desmond's blood sample to the genetic archives and has their thinking machine AI Iniru analyze his blood sample. The results of that blood sample blew my mind because I was not expecting it. I thought Desmond was a Tleilaxu Gola, but this entire time, Desmond's DNA is 50% Harkonnen and 50% Atreides, which brings us to two different discoveries. One, that was the same genetic makeup of Paul Atreides, the Kwisatz Haderach. If you guys remember in Dune Part 2, Paul learns that his mother, Jessica, is the daughter of Baron Harkonnen, and we already know Paul's dad was Leto Atreides. That means Paul is 50% Harkonnen and 50% Atreides, the exact same thing as Desmond. That bloodline combination in Paul is what made him the Kwisatz Haderach. But in Dune Prophecy, 10,000 years before Paul Atreides, we see the combination of that bloodline yet again. And it's not just the bloodlines that make me think that he's a pre-Kwisatz Haderach. It's the fact that Desmond shares a lot of other similarities with Paul Atreides. Remember in the first episode of Dune Prophecy when we found out Desmond survived the Shah-Halud? The way the Shah-Halud stared at him is the same way it reacted to Paul in the first Dune movie. Both Paul and Desmond also have prescient vision. Lila explained to us this episode what prescient vision is, and the dreams that the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood as well as the Acolytes were having were all prescient visions. The only issue here being is that Desmond is over 10,000 years too early, because even Paul Atreides was still one generation too early to being the actual Kwisatz Haderach they needed. But the reality of what Desmond is could be exactly what sends the Sisterhood to creating their version of the Kwisatz Haderach, because now Valia is going to know to have these abilities, it has to be a half Harkonnen, half Atreides male who inherits these powers, which could be how the Sisterhood ends up switching its goals from putting somebody on the throne so early until waiting until they've perfected the bloodline to create their perfect Kwisatz Haderach. Now let's talk about Desmond's parents, which ties directly into episode 3 of Dune Prophecy. Desmond is the son of Ori Atreides and Tula Harkonnen. Desmond this episode was pretty much confirmed to be Tula's son, a son she conceived with Ori Atreides before she killed him. Back in episode 3, remember, she massacred almost every member of House Atreides. So to me, it seems like the night that Tula spent with Ori was the night she conceived Desmond. So even after she killed the entire Atreides line, and don't forget she let that young Atreides boy go, who I now think is Kieran's father, which makes things all that much interesting, because if that young boy is Kieran's father, that would make him Desmond's cousin, which adds a whole nother layer to the dynamic of their relationship. Let's talk about Desmond's backstory a little more. We know Tula was in love with Ori. The only reason she slaughtered him and the rest of his family was because of her loyalty to House Harkonnen and her sister, which is why she let the young boy go. After those events, it seems like Tula learned about her pregnancy, and before she joined the Sisterhood, she gave birth to Desmond and gave him away. And that's how Desmond ended up on the planet Balut for the Tleilaxu slavers to kidnap him in the first place and make him what he is today. Tula probably never told Valia about this because of how Valia feels about House Atreides, and the fact that Tula mixed with their ancient rivals. Instead of mending the fences, it would almost seem like a betrayal to Valia, since she blames House Atreides for the fall from grace of their house, for the death of her brother Griffin, and now you're going to tell her that House Atreides has intermingled with her house? Oh no, Valia could not have that. So in order to protect her son, Tula sent baby Desmond away. And this is in line with Tula's character. The same thing that happened with Desmond is pretty much the same thing that's happening with Lila, where Tula was given instructions by Valia, and instead of following them, she made her own discretionary calls. Now we're seeing how that is coming back to bite them in the butt in the form of Desmond, and it's also coming back to bite them because of Lila. Even though the Sisterhood's thinking machine and Neru brought Lila back last episode, Lila's mind is fractured. In that fracture though, we learn a few things about how the Sisterhood's genetic memory works. Because in this episode, former Mother Superior Raquella has taken over Lila's body. And initially, I thought Dorothea would be the one to do this. However, it's Mother Superior Raquella, and it would make sense because not only was she the one who created the Sisterhood, she also has the most knowledge about all their abilities, except for the voice, because we know Valia created that one. But Raquella being here for pretty much half a day solved exactly how Desmond's powers work and how he's doing what he's doing. I'm gonna break that down in just 1 second, but I want to bring up the fact that Sister Raquella also revealed something about the genetic memory and other memory. The entire time, the way I thought genetic memory and your other memory worked was essentially like a giant meeting table of all your ancestors, and you got to discuss various ideas with all of them and you exchanged information. But that's not how it works. Every memory that the Sisterhood has of their foremothers exists independently of one another. Here's what I mean by that. Sister Raquella asked Tula about the relationship between Valia and Dorothea, which means to me that she doesn't know that Dorothea died, 1, and 2, even while she was in the other memory talking to Lila, we saw that shift happen from Lila talking to Raquella to Lila talking to Dorothea. Even while that's happening, it seems that Raquella was not aware of the conversations that Lila and Dorothea had. That's what I mean by they all exist independently of each other. So the knowledge you're getting from your foremothers is not necessarily the knowledge they all give you. You're actually getting the knowledge from each of them individually, and that's how it all works. It's not just one giant pool of information, it's all individual. The most important information we learned from Mother Superior Raquella this episode is a little backstory into the war against the thinking machines, aka the Butlerian Jihad, and she talks about the Omnius Plague. For those of you who don't know, Omnius was the name of the supreme collective of the machine empire, aka the thinking machines, and it essentially was the big bad that was behind the Butlerian Jihad. Even though humanity defeated the thinking machines in the Butlerian Jihad, Omnius's presence is still being felt in the form of an evolved version of the Omnius Plague. The Omnius Plague was a pathogen created by the thinking machines that affected humanity via the liver, but that was during the time of the Butlerian Jihad. Now Desmond has an updated version of that virus, a genetically modified airborne RNA retrovirus. I know that may sound like a lot of jargon. On top of that, the fact that the virus itself targets the amygdala, the part of the brain that controls your fear centers, and it starts to make sense how exactly Desmond's powers work. To understand what an RNA virus is, we first need to understand what RNA is. RNA is a molecule that's found in all living cells that plays a vital role in our DNA. And one of the main symptoms of an RNA virus is a very high fever. Now, if you take that and you genetically modify it, what does that give you? You keep rising the temperature and people start to burn from the inside out, aka Desmond's ability. You add that with the fact that it latches onto someone's amygdala, causing them mass fear and mass hysteria, which elevates their body temperatures, elevates their hearts, elevates their senses, starts getting them pumping, and you have that person's brain start doing most of the work for you. Desmond just pretty much finishes you off. That's why Desmond was able to attack Kasha and Pruitt at the same time, even though they were far apart, because Kasha was already infected since it's airborne. That means Desmond is spreading it, which could also mean maybe now Valia is infected by it as well, because Desmond left his blood and she took that sample. It's airborne. He went by her, he breathed next to her, he exacerbated, and he made sure to share space with Valia on multiple occasions. So now at any point in time, he could have infected her, and he's just waiting for the right time to activate his virus. The only issue being Valia is an astute disciple of Mother Raquella. One of the first things Raquella knew how to do was to modify her own physiology. That's how she was able to access her other memory in the first place, by stopping the poison that was spreading through her body, which means that now that they know what Desmond's doing, Valia can't stop the ability from killing her because she has such an immense control of her physiology. But you know who does it? And it's not lost on me that they made sure to point out that she was still learning her sisterhood powers. That's Inez. When Princess Inez was interrogating Kirin Atreides, she started using her sisterhood abilities that Kasha taught her. However, she's not a master of it. The way that it was portrayed was not to the level of mastery that Valia had. And another thing that's super important that we can't forget, it was a passing line, but a very important line. Francesca is inside of the Spacing Guild. She works for the Spacing Guild. That means that Valia has her fingers in every faction in the known universe. I just don't see how the Sisterhood is gonna lose, which makes sense because by the time Paul Atreides comes around, over 10,000 years later, the Sisterhood is still in power and still manipulating the Imperium. The only thing I can't wrap my head around is what happens to Desmond. Now that Tula knows that's her son, and he has these abilities, will Tula allow Valia to kill her son? But also when Valia learns that's Tula's son and how his abilities work, will she look to harness it? And if she does, is that the basis of the entire Kwisatz Haderach mythology? Because let's not forget, she sent Sister Michaela back to Arrakis, and during this time frame of Dune Prophecy, has the legend of the Muad'Dib been given to the Fremen yet? I don't think so. The breeding program, while it's in effect, I don't think it's been set up to the point where it's to create the Kwisatz Haderach just yet. It's going to be after this entire debacle with Desmond that changes the course of the Sisterhood forever. And I'm starting to think by the Sisterhood trying to stop Arafel, they're in fact creating it. So whatever they're going to learn from Desmond to create the Kwisatz Haderach program, to start spreading the religion of the Muad'Dib through the Freemen, all of that is the byproduct of what they learn in Dune Prophecy, and I think that's really what's going to bring forth Arafel. Had they left everything alone, it may not have worked that way, but as we can see, the Bene Gesserit and the Bene Talax have their fingers through everything. But guys, that's just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about Dune Prophecy Episode 5 in the comment section below. And what do you think is going to happen in the season finale? Because so far, it's only been 5 episodes, and there's so many things that are still unanswered that I feel like this show could use the next 3 more episodes to really dive into the meat of some of these things. But that's just my thoughts, and I'm being greedy as a fan. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it in the comment section below. And guys, that's it for this video. So until next time, give the video a thumbs up, click the subscribe button, and until next time, peace.